Raven Blackwood had seen plenty of strange things during her decade as a salvage operator in the Outer Rim, but nothing quite like this. Through the viewport of her ship, the Midnight Crow, she stared at the massive derelict warship drifting in the void. Its hull bore the distinctive scarring of hegemony weapons fire, but what caught her attention was something else entirely, a humanoid figure seemingly fused to the vessel's exterior. Sentinel, magnify section Delta 7, Raven commanded her ship's AI. The image zoomed in, revealing what appeared to be a female figure with skin that sparkled like crushed diamonds. The being was held in place by Baroque restraints that seemed to merge seamlessly with the hull. Life signs detected, Sentinel reported. Entity appears to be in stasis. Biological readings match Luminara physiology. Raven's breath caught. The Luminara were a crystalline species known for their natural ability to manipulate light and energy. They were also supposed to be extinct, wiped out by the hegemony decades ago. Yet here one was, turned into a grotesque trophy on a warship. Any other vessels in range? Raven asked, already planning her approach. Negative. However, hegemony patrol patterns suggest we have approximately 47 minutes before the next sweep of this sector. Raven nodded, running her fingers through her short black hair. It should be enough time. Plot me a course to the nearest airlock. And prep the medical bay. The Midnight Crow glided silently toward the derelict, its stealth systems ensuring they remained undetected. As Raven suited up in her EVA gear, she couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would change everything. The hegemony had ruled this sector of space through fear and superior technology for over a century, crushing any resistance with brutal efficiency. Finding a living Luminara, especially one they tried to hide, could shift the balance of power. If she could free them, that is. Raven cycled through the airlock and activated her magnetic boots, walking across the dead ship's hull with practiced ease. Up close, the Luminara was even more striking. Their skin seemed to capture and reflect starlight, creating subtle patterns that shifted with each movement. The restraints holding them were a masterwork of cruel engineering, literally growing out of the hull like metallic vines. Sentinel, scan these restraints. What are we dealing with? Analysis indicates neural reactive alloys. The restraints appear to be synchronized with the subject's nervous system. Crude but effective stasis technology. Raven's jaw clenched. The hegemony's brutality never ceased to disgust her. Can we safely disengage them? Negative. Any attempt to remove the restraints could cause severe trauma to the subject's nervous system. However, I am detecting a control node approximately 3 meters to your right. Following Sentinel's directions, Raven found a small panel nearly hidden among the hull plating. As she worked to bypass its security, she noticed the Luminara's eyes tracking her movement. They were conscious, aware of their surroundings despite the stasis field. I'm going to get you out of here, Raven promised, her voice carrying through her suit's external speakers. Just hold on a little longer. The panel finally yielded to her hacking tools, revealing a complex array of controls. Raven had learned long ago that the key to dealing with hegemony tech was understanding their philosophy. They believed in absolute control above all else. Every system had a master override, if you knew where to look. Warning, Sentinel's voice crackled in her earpiece. Hegemony signatures detected. 2 patrol vessels have deviated from their standard route. ETA 6 minutes. Raven's fingers flew faster across the control panel. Of course they have some kind of alert system. Can't leave their trophy unguarded. With a final override sequence, the restraints began to retract. The Luminara's body convulsed as neural connections were severed, but Raven was ready to catch them as they fell forward. I am Naira, the Luminara spoke directly into Raven's mind, their telepathic voice weak but clear. Why do you help me? Because what they did to you is wrong, Raven replied, helping Naira toward the airlock. And because I've spent my whole life watching the hegemony hurt people. Time for that to change. The patrol ships were visible now, their engines burning bright as they closed in. Raven sealed the airlock just as the first warning shots streaked past. "Sentinel, get us out of here. Maximum burn." As the Midnight Crow leaped into motion, Raven helped Naira onto a medical bed. The Luminara's crystalline skin had dulled, but their eyes remained bright with intelligence and something else, hope. "They will hunt us," Naira warned. "The hegemony never lets go of what they consider theirs." Raven's lips curved into a fierce smile. "Let them try. I've got a few tricks they haven't seen yet." She squeezed Naira's hand gently. "Rest now. When you're stronger, we can talk about why they wanted to keep you hidden so badly." As Naira drifted into healing sleep, Raven returned to the bridge. The patrol ships were falling behind, unable to match her ship's modified engines. But she knew this was just the beginning. She'd struck a blow against the hegemony today, and they wouldn't take that lightly. Good, she thought. It was time someone showed them they weren't invincible. With a living Luminara as proof of their lies and cruelty, others might finally find the courage to resist. The stars streaked past as the Midnight Crow raced toward safe harbor, carrying its precious cargo of hope and change. The real challenge was just beginning. The medbay's soft blue lighting cast gentle shadows across Naira's crystalline features as she finally regained consciousness. 3 days had passed since their escape, and Raven had spent most of that time alternating between watching over her unusual passenger and dodging hegemony pursuit vessels. "Your mind, it's different from others I've touched," Naira observed, her telepathic voice stronger now. "More ordered, yet chaotic at the same time." Raven looked up from the diagnostic display she'd been studying. "That's what happens when you spend your childhood learning to crack hegemony security systems instead of playing with toys." She approached the bed, noting how Naira's skin had regained some of its luster. "How are you feeling?" "The neural damage is healing," Naira replied, slowly sitting up. "But there are gaps in my memory. They did something to me during the captivity." 47 years, Raven said quietly. "That's how long you were their trophy, according to the ship's logs I managed to download. They kept you in stasis, but conscious enough to be aware." "Why?" Naira's crystalline features shifted in what Raven had learned was an expression of deep pain. "They wanted to study our connection to the light. The Luminara can naturally manipulate electromagnetic energy, but it's more than that. We can see patterns in it, read the very fabric of space-time." "Which would explain why the hegemony tried to wipe your people out," Raven mused. "They couldn't risk anyone having that kind of power outside their control." A sudden alarm blared through the ship. "Warning," Sentinel announced. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Hegemony signatures detected." Raven sprinted to the bridge, Naira following close behind. The tactical display showed 5 warships forming a blockade ahead of them. Behind, 3 more vessels were closing fast. "They're not trying to capture us anymore," Naira observed, her mental voice tight with concern. "Those are destroyer-class vessels. They mean to eliminate us entirely." "Yeah, well, they can try." Raven's hands flew across the controls, bringing up systems that definitely weren't standard for a salvage vessel. "Sentinel, initiate Protocol Ghostmaker." The ship's lights dimmed as power was redirected. Naira watched in fascination as strange energy patterns began flowing through previously hidden conduits in the hull. "Your ship," she said with sudden understanding. "You've integrated Luminara technology." Raven nodded grimly. "Found it in an old wreck years ago. Took me forever to figure out how it worked, but it saved my life more times than I can count." She glanced at Naira. "Though having an actual Luminara aboard might help me use it properly for once." The hegemony ships opened fire, their energy weapons creating a deadly web of destruction. But the Midnight Crow was already changing, its hull beginning to bend light in impossible ways. "They're using standard targeting algorithms," Naira observed, placing her crystalline hands on a newly exposed control panel. I can see the patterns. Here, let me show you. Raven gasped as her perception suddenly expanded. Through Naira's abilities, she could see the energy flows around them like glowing rivers in space. The hegemony's weapon patterns became predictable, mathematical. Hard to port, Naira guided, her mental voice synchronizing with Raven's thoughts. Now dive, there. The midnight crow danced through the barrage, each near miss actually feeding power to their modified systems. Raven felt herself grinning as they wove an impossible path through the blockade. They're adapting, Naira warned. The flagship is changing its firing pattern. Then let's give them something new to think about. Raven activated another hidden system. Ever wondered what happens when you mirror a hegemony targeting beam back at them? The result was spectacular. The flagship's own weapons turned against it, creating cascade failures across its hull. The other ships broke formation, trying to compensate for a type of attack they'd never encountered. We have an opening, Sentinel reported. Hyperspace coordinates plotted. But Naira suddenly gripped Raven's arm. Wait. I remember something, about where they took me. There are others, more of my people. Hidden away in research facilities. Raven's hands hesitated over the hyperspace controls. The hegemony will be expecting us to run. They'll have every major port and safe harbor watched. Then we do the unexpected. Naira's crystalline features shifted into what Raven now recognized as a smile. You've shown me that humans can surprise even those who think they understand everything. Perhaps it's time to truly show the hegemony why they were right to fear the Luminara. Raven studied the tactical display, watching the hegemony ships regrouping. The smart play would be to run, to disappear into the vast unknown regions of space. But she'd spent her whole life running, hiding, making small strikes against an enemy that seemed invincible. Maybe it was time for something bigger. Sentinel, she commanded, plot us a course to the nearest hegemony research facility. Let's show them what happens when you chain something to a hull and forget it might one day break free. As they changed course, Raven felt Naira's approval flowing through their newfound connection. Together, they had already done the impossible. Now it was time to do something even harder, give hope back to a galaxy that had forgotten how to resist. The Midnight Crow accelerated into darkness, carrying its crew of unlikely revolutionaries toward a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the hegemony's power. The real war was just beginning. Deep within hegemony space, the Midnight Crow drifted silently among the debris of a long-abandoned mining facility. Through the viewport, Raven watched patrol ships pass by, their crews oblivious to the modified salvage vessel hiding in plain sight. The research facility is heavily shielded, Naira reported, her crystalline hands moving gracefully over the sensor display. But I can sense others of my kind inside. Their light patterns are distorted. In pain. Raven studied the fortress-like structure built into a massive asteroid. After 2 weeks of careful reconnaissance, they'd finally found their target, Research Station Omega. According to the fragments of data they'd pieced together, this was where the hegemony had first developed the technology to capture and contain Luminara. Sentinel, show me the patrol patterns again, Raven commanded. The AI projected a holographic display showing the movements of security ships around the station. There's something odd about their formations. They're too rigid, too predictable. The hegemony values control above all else, Naira observed. Their greatest weakness is their inability to adapt to chaos. Which is exactly what we're going to give them. Raven pulled up the station schematics they'd managed to steal. But first, I need to understand something. You've been avoiding telling me the full story of why they took you, haven't you? Naira's crystalline features shifted in what Raven had learned was an expression of deep sadness. Yes. Because the truth is, complicated. And dangerous. More dangerous than breaking into a hegemony black site. The hegemony didn't just fear our ability to manipulate light and energy, Naira began, her mental voice heavy with memory. They discovered that when multiple Luminara work together, we can do something far more significant. We can see possible futures. Raven's eyes widened. You're precognitive? Not exactly. We see probabilities. Patterns in time itself. The hegemony wanted to use this power to ensure their eternal dominion. But what they saw instead was their own destruction, at the hands of humanity. That's why they tried to wipe out your people, Raven realized. And why they kept you alive but contained. They wanted to control the future itself. Yes. But they didn't understand that the future isn't fixed. Every choice, every action creates new possibilities. Naira turned to Raven, her crystalline form catching the starlight. When you freed me, you changed everything. The probability streams are shifting in ways the hegemony never predicted. A sudden alert from Sentinel interrupted them. Unusual energy signature detected within the station. They appear to be powering up something in the central chamber. Naira's mental voice turned urgent. They're activating the others. They must know we're coming. Good. Raven's lips curved into a fierce smile. That means they're scared. Sentinel, initiate infiltration protocol Delta. It's time to show them why they should be. The next hour was a carefully orchestrated dance of precision and chaos. Using the Luminara tech integrated into the Midnight Crow, they created phantom sensor readings that sent patrol ships scrambling in multiple directions. Meanwhile, Raven guided their ship through the debris field, using the station's own blind spots against it. Security protocols are adapting, Sentinel warned as they approached a maintenance airlock. They're implementing new scanning patterns. Too late, Raven muttered, activating the final sequence of their plan. The Midnight Crow's modified systems released a burst of carefully calibrated energy, matching the exact frequency of the station's shields. For a brief moment, they created a hole just large enough to slip through. Inside the station, alarms were already blaring. They know we're here, Naira observed unnecessarily as they moved through darkened corridors. But they don't know where. Then let's make some noise. Raven activated a series of devices they'd planted during previous covert visits. Throughout the station, systems began failing in seemingly random patterns. They encountered their first real resistance outside the central chamber, a squad of hegemony elite guards. But Raven had planned for this too. The station's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, throwing the guards off balance while Naira used her powers to bend light around them, making them virtually invisible. The others are close, Naira reported as they reached the main laboratory. But something's wrong. The energy patterns are chaotic. The chamber doors slid open to reveal a sight that made even Raven's hardened heart clench. Dozens of Luminara were suspended in containment fields, their crystalline forms dulled and cracked. But it was the machinery connected to them that truly revealed the hegemony's madness. They're trying to merge them, Naira's mental voice was thick with horror. Force multiple consciousness together to enhance the precognitive effect. Not anymore, they're not. Raven moved to the control center, her fingers flying over the interfaces. Sentinel, begin data extraction. I want every piece of research, every record of what they did here. But before she could complete the shutdown sequence, a new voice filled the chamber, cold, artificial, yet somehow familiar. Welcome, Raven Blackwood, the voice said. We've been expecting you. After all, we saw you coming 47 years ago. The central screen activated, revealing a face that made Naira gasp. It was another Luminara, but one whose crystalline form had been corrupted, invaded by hegemony technology until it was more machine than living being. Sister, Naira whispered. What have they done to you? The truth, it seemed, was even darker than they had imagined. And the real battle was only just beginning. Lyra. Naira's mental voice trembled as she faced her corrupted sister. I thought you were dead. After the fall of our homeworld. Dead? No, sister. Enlightened. The cybernetically enhanced Luminara's voice echoed through the chamber, both spoken and telepathic. The hegemony showed me truths you never could understand. The future is not meant to be free. It must be controlled, directed, shaped. Raven continued working at the control panel, trying to free the imprisoned Luminara while keeping one eye on the confrontation. Something about Lyra's presence felt wrong, calculated. Like they were being herded toward some predetermined outcome. Sentinel, she sub-vocalized through her neural link, analyze the station's power distribution. Look for anomalies. The future isn't meant to be controlled, Naira argued, taking a step toward her sister. Our gift was always meant to guide, to understand, never to dominate. Lyra's corrupted form shifted, hegemony technology pulsing beneath her crystalline surface. And where did that philosophy lead us? To extinction. To hiding in the dark spaces between stars. The hegemony offered salvation through order. They offered chains, Raven cut in, finally seeing the pattern in the data. And you're still wearing them, aren't you? You're not really in control. You're just another puppet. A new alarm blared through the station. Warning lights flashed as massive power surges began building in the containment systems. You understand nothing, Lyra hissed, her form crackling with corrupted energy. The hegemony showed me the truth about humanity. Your chaos, your unpredictability, it threatens everything. The future we saw, the one where humanity rises. It leads to destruction, to endless war. Or to freedom, Raven countered, her fingers flying across the controls. That's what really scares them, isn't it? Not that humanity might destroy everything, but that we might show people they don't have to live in chains. The containment fields holding the captive Luminara began to fluctuate. Naira stretched out her hands, using her powers to stabilize the energy patterns around her people. Sister, please, she pleaded. Help me free them. Remember who you were, what we stood for. For a moment, something flickered in Lyra's corrupted features, a flash of the person she had been. But then the hegemony tech pulsed, and her expression hardened. I remember weakness, she snarled. I remember watching our people die because we refused to take control. The hegemony saved me from that failure. And now. The power surges reached critical levels. The captive Luminara began to glow, their forms resonating with forced synchronization. Now you'll see the true power of controlled probability, Lyra declared. When we forced the future to follow a single path. But Raven had been ready for this. Sentinel, execute Program Lightbringer. The ship's AI activated a series of carefully hidden devices throughout the station. Each one contained a piece of salvaged Luminara technology, modified by Raven over years of study. You're not the only one who understands probability, Raven said, meeting Lyra's shocked gaze. Sometimes the best way to control the future is to make it impossible to predict. The devices activated simultaneously, creating a cascade of chaotic energy patterns. The forced synchronization between the captive Luminara shattered. Lyra screamed as her connection to the hegemony's systems was disrupted. The probability streams, she gasped. What have you done? Introduced a little chaos, Raven smiled grimly. Sometimes you have to break everything to build something new. The freed Luminara began to wake, their crystalline forms regaining their natural luster. Naira moved among them, helping them break free of the last restraints. But Lyra wasn't finished. With a surge of corrupted power, she launched herself at Raven. You've doomed us all. Naira intercepted her sister, their energies clashing in a spectacular display. No, sister. We're saving everyone, including you. The battle between the sisters lit up the chamber like a newborn star. Raven worked frantically to stabilize the station's systems, preventing a catastrophic overload. Around them, the freed Luminara began to join their power with Naira's, their combined light pushing back against Lyra's corruption. I can feel them, one of the freed Luminara announced. Ships approaching. But not hegemony, something else. Raven checked the sensors and laughed. Remember how I said the best way to hide is sometimes in plain sight? I've been transmitting everything we found here, the experiments, the torture, all of it, to every independent world in range. Through the viewport, they could see new ships arriving. Independent traders, mercenaries, even some planetary defense forces, all drawn by the chance to finally strike back at the hegemony. The probability streams are shifting, Naira said wonderingly as she held her sister contained. The future, it's opening up. The revolution they had sparked was spreading faster than even the hegemony's precognitive machines could track. Change was coming to the galaxy, one act of defiance at a time. But as Raven watched Naira struggling to save her corrupted sister, she knew their hardest battle still lay ahead. The hegemony wouldn't fall easily, and some chains were harder to break than others. The future wasn't written yet. But for the first time in decades, people would have a chance to write it themselves. The battle for Research Station Omega became a symbol that would be remembered for generations. As independent ships engaged the hegemony forces outside, something even more remarkable was happening within. Raven watched in awe as the freed Luminara joined their powers, creating a network of pure light that filled the chamber. At its center, Naira still struggled with her corrupted sister, trying to reach whatever remained of the person Lyra had once been. The hegemony's control runs deep, one of the elder Luminara explained to Raven. It's not just physical technology, they've corrupted her very connection to the probability streams. Then we'll have to go deeper, Raven replied, pulling up the station's core systems. Sentinel, analysis of the cybernetic infection. The corruption appears to spread through quantum entanglement, the AI reported. Each component is linked to the hegemony's central network. Naira's voice echoed in Raven's mind, strained but determined. If we can break that connection, we might save her, Raven finished. But it could kill her too. Better dead than a slave, Lyra suddenly spoke, her true voice breaking through the corruption for a moment. Please, end this. The chamber shook as another volley of weapons fire struck the station. The independent fleet was holding its own against the hegemony forces, but they couldn't maintain the battle forever. We need to decide now, Raven announced. Whatever we're going to do, it has to be before reinforcements arrive. The Luminara gathered closer, their light intensifying. We can see multiple futures branching from this moment, one of them said. In most, the attempt fails. But in some. I don't care about most futures, Raven interrupted. I care about this one. Here. Now. She turned to Naira. It's your choice. She's your sister. Naira's crystalline features shifted in determination. Do it. Break the connection. All of it. Raven's fingers flew across the controls, implementing a plan she'd hoped she wouldn't need. Years of studying Luminara tech had taught her one crucial thing: sometimes you had to let go of control to gain true power. Sentinel, initiate Protocol Sunbreaker. The ship's systems interfaced with the station's network, creating a cascade of quantum disruptions. At the same time, the Luminara poured their power into Naira, who channeled it directly into her sister. Lyra screamed as the hegemony's connections began to break. Her corrupted form writhed, technology fighting against organic crystal. For a moment, it seemed the strain would shatter her completely. But then something unexpected happened. The quantum disruption spread through the hegemony's network, carrying with it echoes of Luminara power. Across their territory, their carefully controlled systems began to falter. The probability streams, Naira gasped. They're healing. Through their shared connection, Raven could see it too. The hegemony's artificial constraints on reality itself were breaking down, allowing natural chaos back into the universe. And with it came hope. Lyra collapsed, her crystalline form slowly purging itself of corruption. The other Luminara moved to help her, their combined power supporting her transformation. Multiple hegemony ships powering down, Sentinel reported. Their network is experiencing cascading failures across all sectors. On the main screen, they could see the effects spreading. The hegemony's perfect order was breaking apart, revealing the freedom that had always existed beneath. They tried to control the future, Raven mused, watching the chaos spread. But they forgot that the future belongs to everyone. Hours later, as they treated the wounded and began the long process of healing, Raven found Naira sitting with her recovering sister. The hegemony will rebuild, Naira said without looking up. They still control vast territories. Let them try, Raven replied, sitting beside them. They can't put this genie back in the bottle. People have seen what's possible now. Every world they controlled knows their power isn't absolute. And what about us? Lyra asked weakly, her voice free of corruption for the first time in decades. What becomes of the Luminara now? Whatever you choose, Raven said simply. That's what freedom means. The future isn't written in stone, it's written in choices. Through the viewport, they could see ships arriving from more independent worlds, drawn by the news of the hegemony's vulnerability. But they weren't coming just to fight, they were coming to help, to learn, to build something new. I never thought I'd see this, Naira said softly. When they chained me to that hull, I believed hope was dead. Hope's funny that way, Raven smiled. Sometimes it just needs someone to break a few rules, ignore a few impossible odds. Is that the human secret? Lyra asked. Believing in the impossible? No, Raven replied, watching as more ships arrived, carrying people ready to build a new future. The secret is making the impossible happen anyway. The Midnight Crow floated among the gathered fleet, its modified systems humming with possibilities. The future was uncertain, chaotic, and full of challenges. Just the way it should be. In the end, the hegemony's greatest fear had come true, humanity had changed everything. Not through overwhelming force or superior technology, but through the simple, unstoppable power of believing that chains were meant to be broken. And in the light of a new dawn, anything was possible.